Hello and welcome. Are you a new player to Smite, or do you have a basic understanding of the game but want to take yourself to the next level? Well, look no further. I've put together 10 simple tips to incorporate into your gameplay that will improve you as a player straight away. So no messing about, let's get straight into it. Tip number 1 is to keep a mental note of enemy abilities, ults and relics. Knowing your own god strength is of course key to winning matchups, but so is knowing your opponent's weaknesses. Many gods in the game rely heavily on certain abilities, or play strongly around their ult, or have to rely on relics to escape danger. Identifying and knowing when these are on cooldown is how you open a window of opportunity in a fight. For example, Thor's main escape is his hammer throw, but it's also one of his sources of damage. So if you see Thor throw his hammer when high in lane, you now know that he has no way to quickly get out of a fight without ulting. Similarly, if you see Bastet perform her leap, she is very much stuck for an escape if she can't activate it again quickly, and is left as a sitting duck. Learn which gods rely heavily on their abilities to escape, and learn to capitalise. In terms of ultimates, gods like Poseidon and Humbats can completely dominate a teamfight with a huge area of effect ultimate, and flip a fight on its head. Meaning that starting a teamfight while these kind of ultimates are available may not be a wise decision. Notice when they have been used and recognise when they haven't. They might be baiting you into grouping up. Finally, many gods have no escape at all and rely on beads or Aegis to get themselves out of trouble. But if their beads are on cooldown, then for some gods that's almost a free kill. For example, if you are playing Ares or Daji and notice that the enemy Poseidon has no beads, you know that catching them in your ultimate is pretty much a free kill. The key here is to notice when enemies have used their relics, ultimates or abilities, and keep a mental track of how long they won't have them for again. And this also leads quite nicely onto my next point. Tip number 2 is to communicate with your teammates. In theory this shouldn't need to be said, but one of my biggest frustrations in matches is the lack of communication from my teammates. Any team playing as 5 individuals will lose almost all of the time. If you are in voice chat, then keep constant communication with your allies. Has an enemy used beads? Call it out. Is a teamfight changing ultimate on an enemy been used and therefore on cooldown? Call it out. Is the enemy in your lane missing? Call it out. Are you going to gank the enemy and surprise them? You guessed it, call it out. So many in-game issues can be fixed with effective communication. The flip side of this is to listen. When an ally makes a call, it's pointless if nobody listens. So many times I hear someone call a missing enemy, and within seconds an ally dies to a gank from the jungle. The call was there to be careful, but it just wasn't followed. So pay attention. Tip number 3 follows on perfectly from my last point. It's almost as if I planned it that way. It's that people should really learn to use voice commands. Smite has one of the most effective voice command shortcut systems I've seen in a game. If you want to be anything more than an average player, it should be vital that you learn the commands for the key calls in the game. Letting your allies know you are backing, your ultimate is ready, the enemy is missing, an enemy ultimate is down, where the enemy jungler is, or to attack an objective, these are just the basics. Learn these like the back of your hand before even stepping into ranked. You can practice these at any time in the main menu, but the best system I found is to pick 3, play practice games and just spam them until you know them like second nature. It gets to a stage where muscle memory kicks in and you don't even have to think. So practice, practice, practice. One way that you can tell a new player is by watching them panic beads or Aegis when they're about to die. Don't just press them as a last resort. Use them when they will save your life and you will escape. If they save you but you die anyway, then it's a complete waste. Burning someone's relics and then killing them is like a kill and a half. For some abilities you can pre-beads or pre-Aegis and completely mess up an enemy engage. For example, our Kwang and Neja both have ultimates that can be prevented by a well-timed beads or Aegis, and it leaves them overextended and vulnerable. Know when to use them and don't just panic them as a last resort. Tip 5 is knowing who to focus and when. Watching other players and who they focus during teamfights is another one of my biggest frustrations, and one of the first lessons I teach with new players. Just because an enemy guardian is stood in your face does not mean you should focus him. If you use all of your abilities on an enemy tank, you've opened the window for an assassin to dive you and pick up an easy kill. Target prioritization is key. Unless the tank is causing you major issues and you have the penetration to deal with him, you should be focusing the enemy hunter, mage or assassin, whoever the biggest threat is to your team. That should be your priority. Conversely, if you are the guardian or warrior, then make sure you're effectively peeling for your allies and not allowing the damage dealers to be focused. In many teamfights, I see the guardian and warrior wander off to attack the backline while your own backline is being decimated. Know your role and where you should be, and know who to focus. Step 6, and any experienced players watching this will be glad I'm saying it, is buy wards. Go and watch any pro game and then compare it to your own matches. And one of the biggest differences you will notice is the pros' use of wards. They are essential. For everyone else, they are underused. Correctly placing a ward works on so many levels. For example, if you are in the duo lane and your ward placed here spots a jungler, then retreat and get back under your tower. This does a number of things. Not only does this save your life, but it stops the enemy killing you and gaining gold and XP, and also potentially saves your tower. But more than that, it wastes the enemy jungler's time because they've travelled over there for zero gain. Also, your jungler now has time to invade buffs or gank the middle lane because they know where the enemy jungler is and they won't be able to support them. It's not over the top to say that proper warding wins Conquest games, so don't neglect them. Tip 7 is knowing how to counter build your opponents. For me, bad players get stuck in a loop of buying the same items every game, regardless of how the game is going. If the enemy has a healer, then make sure you have anti-heal. There's enough offensive and defensive anti-heal items that there's always one that you can fit into your build. Also, look, does the enemy have a combination that's all started by one crowd control? If that's the case, buy Magi's Blessing and prevent it from happening. Additionally, does the enemy hunter have full crit build? Then buy the item that reduces crit damage. You can check the scoreboard at any time throughout games to see what the enemy is building into. If there's space in your build to counter, then you definitely should. Next up is to use your map. Map knowledge is what separates bad players from great ones. In my other guide, I recommend increasing your map size to maximum straight away to help with this, and for good reason. Your map lets you know what is happening behind you, and ignoring it will not end well for you. Your map tells you when to engage, when the enemy is out of position, and if your allies forget to mention it, when they have bagged. Check your map every few seconds. It's basically your eyes and ears in every lane. Next up is to play the gods who beat you. One of the best pieces of advice I received when I first started playing Smite was to play as many gods as possible to learn their strengths and their weaknesses. Particularly, if one god keeps getting the better of you, then play them yourself and they may not be as easy to play as you think. In my early days I struggled massively against a relics. I thought she was unbeatable. But after playing her, I realised that you can counter her with good positioning and not turning your back. So broaden your horizons and play as many gods as possible. Finally, I'll end on something that I think plagues this community, and it's something, I'll be honest, I've been guilty of myself. So many players, if not ahead on 10 minutes, just throw up the surrender rope and act like the game is over. Never surrender a game of Conquest. In the late game, death timers last so long that winning just one team fight can completely turn a game on its head. I've played in games where every tower and phoenix is lost and the Titan was down to single digit health, and we flipped it back to win. Even if you are miles behind and defeat is a certainty, take it as a lesson as in playing from behind. Learn to defend objectives, learn when to disengage, and when to play on the back foot. Even the pros aren't ahead in every single game. Defending in Smite is just as important as attacking, so don't neglect opportunities to do so. Don't wave that white flag at the first opportunity. Stay calm and just play under tower. And that's everything. I want to try and keep this video as short as possible, so thank you for anyone who watched. If you'd like to support the channel, then please like and subscribe, or you can follow me over on Twitch where I do live streams and often let's plays. Thanks.